My name is Sly Tate. I'm the Chief of Operations here at Itonyx, formerly known as Tate Computer Systems. We're a 38-year-old service-disabled, veteran-owned small business based here in Memphis, Tennessee. My role is to make sure that the daily functions that are done here within the organization flow as appropriate. I report directly to the CEO. My responsibilities are not just limited to overseeing the operations of the operations team, but also for sales operations, for technical operations, for any administrative operations. So my role is deep and wide in multiple legs of the business. Before working with the offshore team, our sales and operations and engineering and support model was all built in-house, and we were dependent pretty much solely on whoever was available to work it at any given point in time. Of course, we're always looking for high quality candidates to deliver the world class services that we pride ourselves on. But, limitations in the job market and the cost effectiveness of the approach to the market was really becoming, I'll say, a slowdown relative to what we were hoping to accomplish within the business. The problems and bottlenecks that we were experiencing were kind of similar to what any business experiences, having dreams that are much bigger than what your current resources are, but not having a clear way to get there. One of the big things about us is that we wanted to build a local homegrown team, but, in talking with remoting.work, they actually opened our mind to the prospect of working directly with someone overseas or offshore, other employees within our business who may not have the same level of experience grow. What stood out about remoting.work compared to other staffing or outsourcing options was the level of trust that they developed with us throughout the process. They didn't just come in trying to sell us immediately. They actually understood our needs and how we were trying to grow the business. And it took a while in several conversations before we got to a place where we ultimately felt comfortable giving it a try. And the resumes that they sent over were highly impressive. And also, I think, one of the things that gave me a ton of solace was the level of relationship that they had with the BPO itself. And it wasn't just about, finding any given BPO. It was also about having a strong relationship with the government of the countries that they were operating in. And furthermore, properly vetting candidates and doing the background checks that are necessary that are for our line of work. And so, it's very obvious the caliber of the individual that we receive on any given basis is at any given time has been quite impressive. And it's obvious that, what's written on the resume is something that they've actually done. Whereas, other organizations that we've worked with in the past will charge exorbitant management fees. And ultimately, we hope that things go appropriately, but being able to sit with Tony and as well as Miss Carolyn, Brendan, they've all been great in helping me understand the internal operations of what they do, ultimately to drive me to the place where I can feel comfortable having someone on my team and engaged in my emails and the actual sales flows of this company, which is a pretty big deal. So in terms of specific capabilities that we were looking for in sales operations support, as well as level 3 engineering support for sales operations, we needed someone who could really kind of understand the business in and of itself, negotiate terms in some cases with vendors. And so there's a ton of vendor engagement in our line of work. Excuse me, the sales operations person has done a great job of logging into portals, making sure we stay compliant in various places. We also have used them to craft proposals. So a lot of the time intensive work that's involved with responding to bids and RFPs and just attending to the needs of various customers has been handled pretty swimmingly by our sales operations support. And on the level 3 side, we needed some high level, and when I say high level, I mean experienced, um, well versed uh, employees for management of cloud environments, especially when we get to things like AWS, Azure, and the candidates actually seemed like they were coming specifically from backgrounds where they've actually worked for Microsoft or AWS, which was super impressive. And so they were already serving in these support roles separately, and it just meant that I didn't have to do a ton of training when they got here. Right. And so it's awesome just to be able to walk into the next phase for the company and also have, other people be able to learn from, the different things that they're ultimately able to do. Right. The technical depth and understanding of the environment was quite impressive as well. I'll also mention that, onboarding was relatively seamless. We picked a date, they started on that date, and they were available, in honestly, there's some advantages to hiring from a BPO because we're from an organization like remoting.work because they have better vacation terms. And I just pay for a subscription. And under that subscription, people show up to work, they're on time, oftentimes ahead of time, and they do a great job when they're here. There were a couple of candidates, just to be honest with you, that we tried, and we weren't super happy with some of their performances. And they were always very attentive to making sure that we received updates on, how they may have addressed the issues internally. And furthermore, speedy replacements only needed them. When I decided to move on from a candidate, it wasn't a why I think you should keep them. It was a hey, how can we do better for the next candidate that we get in here for you? And we spent a good amount of time just making sure that the resumes were crafted appropriately and the job descriptions actually matched the expectations and identified the appropriate job descriptions for each of these roles. It can be taxing at times to actually have to draft them, so they will help us by listening in on calls and asking probing questions, get to a place where we've actually called out the specifics of what we need so that when they go back and look for candidates, they know that they've, found a number of great fits. Oftentimes I find myself wanting to hire multiple of the candidates they bring. I had to remind myself, one person at a time as we built this company brick by brick. The impact has been huge time savings for relatively expensive resources inside of the company so they can focus more on what makes them special and what they do. And ultimately, there's also a sense of comfort that they provide from the standpoint of, I never look around and wonder, how am I going to get something done? It's really a question of, why haven't I already thought about how I could identify a role that would make sense inside of our organization to make a process or something smoother. So it really has opened up the possibilities for us within the company. It goes beyond the scope of just looking at it as a great way to save money to, hey, this is really an accelerator for our company's growth plans. And so when we think about some of the overhead associated with, growing a company from, 40 employees to 1,000, which is our ultimate goal, we, really had to think about, okay, well, how do you get there methodically? There's such thing as growing too fast. Right. And so ultimately, this gave us a way to try things, fail, and not have to, in that failure, spend a huge amount of money on taking on that failure. Right. And so we get to fail fast, understand, and we take the learnings from those failures, and it just makes the next products or service portfolios that we're creating even better. And so our time to resolution on issues has increased by quite a bit. I'm sorry, has reduced by quite a bit. And the workload of internal staff has been reduced as well. Noticeable difference has just been the sheer amount of time I used to actually have to spend on vendor calls working with ISPs or whoever else might be affecting the service quality of, our particular client's setup. And now I can say, hey, this is a level 3 ticket, hand it over to our level 3 technician, and he will coordinate with making sure that people are on site, doing what they're supposed to do, and, really giving back a ton of my time to focus on things that, actually help build the company, right? I can think about a time where Comcast was having an issue with one of our clients, and they had to have several visits to come out and actually fix the issue that was occurring. And I had up to date updates daily on how things were going, how far we were going, getting along with actually completing the work that needed to be done. And then ultimately, we landed at a place where we effectively were able to kind of not think so much about, those things, I guess. What I really have been impressed with too is the quality of the documentation that especially the level 3 technician produces. There was actually one point at which we needed to display some options to a customer. And when we displayed those options to the customer, it was done on a slide deck that was 10 times better than what we were using internally. And, I actually had to go to him and say, hey, what is this tool that you're using to actually generate internal content? And he showed it to me. And, we, he really kind of set the bar internally for what we should expect for presentations to our customers. So, of course, really appreciate the contribution to not only just, the great display that we made to the customer, but also to the internal practices that we use. At the end of the day, every employee matters. It's just great to get it at the prices that we're getting it at. Having him in place has also freed up our ability to grow this business in a major way. So from the sales operations to the L3 cost, that was probably taking up, north of 60% of my time. And having 60% of that time back, I've now been able to spend more time with customers, spend more time with working directly with um, individuals who really need the special expertise that I have, and ultimately getting to a place where we have the ability to grow the brand. So, I mentioned in the beginning, we were Tape Computer Systems with the help of remoting.work. Now we're Itonyx. We're a regional brand. We're a national brand. And, I really don't think it could have been possible without the efficiency gains we gained from working with remoting.work. And so I really appreciate, remoting in the team, and we look forward to continued deals to come. Take care.